Holy crap, gang. Harley-Davidson dealerships are selling dirt cheap entry-level motorcycles, with some of them showing up online for as little as $3,300. That's $3,300. Yes, actual Harleys, no joke. This is not a drill. But before you rush to the dealership to buy one, there is a catch. So yes, believe it or not, Harley-Davidson motorcycles are showing up at prices that look suspiciously cheap. I mean, beginner bike cheap, like used Honda Rebel cheap, or a Kawasaki Z400. We're talking used Royal Enfield money, that cheap. And when I read this story, I started looking around online wondering, why the heck nobody's talking about this? But let's back the truck up here a second and separate the headline from the actual story, because the motorcycle we're talking about is Harley-Davidson's X350RA. That little 350cc bike that Harley-Davidson's been using at their riding program here in the United States. Before now, regular old customers couldn't walk into a dealership and just buy one. It was just a training bike. It existed in the Harley world, but not in the Harley showroom. But now, Harley's telling dealerships that they can sell those defleeted 350s as used motorcycles. And if this were only about Harley selling off old training bikes, then it'd still be interesting. But it's the timing of this that makes it even more interesting. See, Harley's also planning to roll out that Sprint entry-level model later in 2026. And there's been a lot of speculation that it could in some way be tied to that X440 from India. Plus, Harley just recently announced that they're bringing back the Sportster A3. So selling the X350 feels like the first piece to drop in a much larger shift in strategy. Let's lay out exactly what the X350RA is, because this is the part where a lot of people might start ripping it apart in the comments before they've even heard the full story. Because it's not a big air-cooled V-twin cruiser. It's not a Softail. It's not a mini Road King. It's not going to sit in your garage making your rafters vibrate while your neighbors wonder if you just fired up a small block Chevy. This is a small displacement, liquid-cooled parallel twin motorcycle that Harley-Davidson's been using in its Riding Academy. And that matters because that Riding Academy is where new riders get their first real taste of motorcycles. So people learn how to ride on these 350s, think, hey, I was pretty comfortable on that. This is a pretty cool experience. But then they can't walk into the showroom and buy one, even if they wanted to. That has always been a strange gap in Harley's beginner pipeline. So suddenly that X350 being available as a used motorcycle gives Harley dealerships something they haven't had before in a really long time. A truly low-cost, approachable Harley branded motorcycle that new riders might consider as their first motorcycle. Now, before we get too excited about the idea of a $3,300 Harley, there are a few catches. First and foremost, at least for the moment, these are defleeted Harley Riding Academy bikes. That means they're used. And not just used, but used by students. And if you've ever watched brand new students in a parking lot, then you already know what that means. Now, that doesn't automatically mean that they're bad motorcycles. They're built and equipped for that purpose. But it does mean that you should look at them very closely before buying one. It may have spent a lot of time doing low-speed maneuvers in a very hot parking lot. That clutch and those brakes may have had a brief but very harsh life. That doesn't make it a bad deal, it just means that inspection is much more important. The second catch is that these things need a retail conversion kit before they can be sold in the US. But the good news is that that's something that the dealership has to do before they can even put it up for sale. The moral of the story here is, yes, the price is attention grabbing, but this is still not a blind impulse buy, even at this price. All right, let's talk prices, because that's the eye popper. Some of the coverage around these bikes suggested that they would land somewhere under $9,000. And by Harley standards, under $9,000 already feels like somebody accidentally left a digit off the price tag. But then I started looking at the actual used X350RA listings on Cycle Trader, and I'm already seeing these bikes showing up for sale around $3,300. Not $9,000, $3,300. That's not just a cheap Harley. That's cheap in comparison to a lot of beginner motorcycles in general. At that price, the X350RA is suddenly not competing with a used Softail or even a used Sportster. It's competing with used Honda Rebels, used Kawasaki Z400s, used Royal Enfields. The kind of motorcycles people normally recommend when someone says, I just passed my MSF course, but I don't want to spend my entire life savings. Now, to be clear, this is not the same as Harley launching some brand new $3,300 motorcycle. That would be a completely different headline, and I think the internet might burst into flames. These are used training bikes, so the inventory will be limited and conditions will vary. but I haven't seen any listings with more than about 12 or 1300 miles on them. And these have been ridden in parking lots, not racking up highway miles. And even with all of those caveats, price is hard to ignore, because if a new rider can walk into a Harley dealership and see Harley branded beginner bikes priced the same as a beginner bike from some other brand, that gives Harley a real chance to get new riders into the Harley family. The X350 doesn't need to be a profit machine, it just needs to be a doorway. Get a new rider on a bike, let them build a relationship with the brand. A couple years down the road, maybe they trade it in for something else in the lineup. That's how rider pipelines are supposed to work. There is a bit of a confidence factor already built in here too. The X line isn't new. The X440 was developed through Harley's partnership with Hero Motocorp in India, designed for a market where price sensitivity matters a lot. And it didn't just show up and get ignored either. It generated real interest, giving Hero Motocorp a significant share in that competitive middleweight market in India, about 11%. That X line overseas shows that there's a demand for a Harley bike underneath that traditional American lineup. And when you bring that back to this news about the X350, the timing starts to make a little sense. Harley has a small bike success story overseas. It has a bunch of small Riding Academy bikes here in the US. And it has a new entry-level model under the Sprint name expected to come later this year. Plus that Sportster 883 comeback. That does not feel random. That feels like Harley trying to rebuild the bottom floor of the house. This is also where we need to talk about Harley's leadership, because none of this feels accidental. Under Artie Starrs, Harley's been talking about getting back to the bricks, focusing on dealers, rebuilding volume, supporting the core business, and making the brand more accessible to new riders. That language matters because for a while, Harley seemed trapped between preserving its premium image versus reinventing an entry-level path into the brand. And that's a hard problem. If Harley goes too cheap, the loyalists accuse the company of watering down the brand. If Harley stays too expensive, younger and newer riders go somewhere else. So the current strategy appears to be trying to thread that needle. And I think the direction we're seeing is meaningful. This is the first time in a while where Harley's entry-level strategy looks like more than just talk. Here's another important angle. Harley dealers need traffic. They need reasons for people to walk in who are not already shopping for street glides, road glides, or expensive CVOs. They need those beginner riders and people who always liked Harley but assumed everything in the building was too expensive. A used X350RA gives the dealership something that they've never had that I can recall in my lifetime. A Harley-Davidson motorcycle at a price point that can pull people in that otherwise may have never walked into a Harley dealership. And for Harley dealers who've been frustrated by a lack of truly affordable inventory, this could be a helpful short-term bridge until that Sprint and 883 arrive. It's not perfect. It's limited, it depends on availability, but it gives dealers something to work with. An added bonus, it gives dealers a reason to refresh their Riding Academy fleet. Training bike today, used beginner bike tomorrow. That is much better than having a big fleet of Training Academy bikes aging out with no clear retail path. And it gives a leg up to the salespeople too. I mean, imagine for a second a new rider taking that Riding Academy course, loving the experience, feeling comfortable on that bike, and then seeing that they can buy that very bike in the showroom for just over $3,000. It practically sells itself. You know, I do have to wonder though. We were talking on a video recently about the attacks that Indian's been leveling against Harley and their alleged influencer campaign. And with Indian basically saying they're going all in on more expensive models, I do have to wonder if these pushes towards affordability on the Harley side have got Indian a little bit worried. They've committed themselves to a bunch of very expensive high-end platforms to compete with where they thought Harley was. But suddenly Harley's competitive strategy shifts. That could leave Indian priced out on a very expensive and lonely island. Things that make you go, So let's get practical here. Should someone actually buy one of these X350RA motorcycles? Unfortunately, that answer is a big maybe. Motorcycles are rarely simple, unless you're arguing with somebody on the internet, in which case everything is simple and everyone else is wrong. But for the right rider, the X350 might make a lot of sense. If you're a brand new rider, especially somebody who might have just taken that Rider Academy course and felt comfortable on that kind of bike, a used X350RA could be a comfortable and affordable way to start riding. We've also been talking a lot recently about downsizing or getting a change of pace bike on this channel. This bike could make a lot of sense for that, but there are reasons to be cautious. First, it's a used training bike. That means you need to inspect it like a used training bike. Also, you can't buy this expecting a traditional Harley experience. If you want rumble, torque, and that old school Harley feeling, this probably isn't your bike. The best buyers for this bike are probably people who say, I like Harley, but I want a cheap, manageable first bike, and I understand exactly what this bike is. If that's you, this could be a really interesting deal. This whole story matters because for a long time, Harley has had an entry problem. So Harley needs a better on-ramp. The X350RA is not perfect, but it's affordable. And with the Sprint and the Sportster 883 on the horizon, it feels like that on-ramp's being rebuilt. And that's good for motorcycling in general. The industry needs new riders. If Harley can become part of that first bike conversation again, that's a big deal. Now, could this go wrong? Sure. A lot of Harley loyalists are not going to accept that X350RA. That may not sound fair from a business standpoint, but it's real. And the second problem is competition. Rebuilding an affordable on-ramp into the lineup is awesome, but the beginner bike market is not empty. Honda, Kawasaki, Yamaha, Suzuki, Royal Enfield, KTM, CF Moto. None of these guys are sitting around waiting for Harley to discover affordability. They've been selling beginner-friendly bikes for years. And third, dealers have got to help themselves here. Not all Harley dealers are the same. Some will embrace affordable bikes and new riders. Some will treat them like a distraction from the expensive stuff. So yes, I love the direction that I'm seeing from Harley lately, but execution is everything. From my perspective, the X350 is not going to save Harley all by itself. It's just one limited quantity motorcycle. But I think it matters because it represents a real shift in mindset and the first domino to fall in a line of promised dominoes. For the first time that I can remember, Harley appears to be rebuilding the lower end of its lineup in a tangible way that seems real, has actual structure. And that's a piece that Harley's been missing. So now you tell me, if you were helping out a new rider trying to find their first motorcycle, and there was an X350RA sitting on a Harley showroom floor for just $3 grand, would you tell them to seriously consider it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I think this one's gonna split the room. Some people are gonna see the X350RA as a smart, affordable way into the brand. Others are gonna say it doesn't really count, or it's not what Harley should be doing, or that it doesn't belong anywhere near the Bar and Shield logo. And honestly, that debate might be exactly why this little bike matters. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. So in the meantime, ride hard, stay salty, and we'll see you in the next one.